continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security.
Despite their lowered expectations, Trump world apparently had nothing to worry about because that's where the disaster began for Joe Biden. After only 11 minutes into the debate, he froze and couldn't come up with a complete sentence. But it was far from the only time.
Now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists.
And that was the theme of the debate. Every time Joe Biden couldn't figure out where he was going, Donald Trump took the opportunity to play off of it and launch into a fresh new lie, knowing Biden was too busy being confused to call it out. His weeks-long preparation was immediately exposed as an extreme cram session of reciting accomplishments along with pre-planned references to Trump's worst traits.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history has spoken like that before. Number three, the crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of things, of having sex with a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant? I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
The entire plan apparently was mapped out in debate prep. His handlers figured that at this point of the debate, Trump would be reeling from all the facts and figures that they planned for Joe Biden to deliver, except he hadn't been delivering anything for a solid 40 minutes, but still followed this game plan with no recognition that it was time to call some audibles. Going after his trial and well-known affair with Stormy Daniels wasn't even really needed at that point, so it actually made Biden look like he was lashing out over his feeble performance instead of calling out Trump's immoral standards. And since Peyton Manning wasn't around to yell Omaha and change the play, Biden went for the next big pre-planned swing.
We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump?
The family tragedies that President Biden has lived through are well known and tend to receive a lot of empathy. So the plan to include his son's sacrifice to the country into Trump's well-known suckers and losers comment was supposed to evoke righteous anger and disdain towards him. But it actually fell flat. They didn't seem to have much of a plan that paid really any attention to what Trump would say or how he'd behave. They went into this thing completely ignoring their opponent and one of his biggest character flaws, which is lying.
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say I'm at a cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
Trump rattled off multiple lies about his record with the military and the origin of the suckers and losers line. But again, Biden was too busy being confused over trying to focus on the next pre-planned debate moment to recognize it and to respond. The energy of Trump's failure to debate took all the attention away from how blatantly dishonest Trump was. It was a disaster that no one could deny.
Mr. President, how did you perform tonight?
I think we did well.
Do you have any concerns concern that you're not the job, your voice, your performance tonight? Do you have any concerns about your performance?
No, it's hard to debate a liar. New York Times pointed out he lied 26 times. Big lies. He didn't tell them.
He knows he didn't show up. But post-debate spin usually gives both sides some wiggle room to try to highlight their best moments. So when all you got is, it's hard to debate a liar, it shows just how bad it was.
CNN's John King has described a panic inside the Democratic Party right now because of President Biden's performance in tonight's debate. He's been hearing from Democratic lawmakers and others around the country. Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
Listen, first of all, what we saw tonight is the president making a very clear contrast with Donald Trump on all of the issues that matter to the American people. Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people, on substance, on policy, on performance. Joe Biden is extraordinarily strong. And
I'm sorry,
that
on
cannot
substance
be
and
debated.
policy and performance tonight, I mean, the president's performance tonight clearly was disappointing for his supporters. CNN is reporting Democratic lawmakers watching the debate were worried about the president's performance. One said it was a disaster. Another called it a train wreck. Those are Democrats especially worried that Biden did not punch back on Trump's lies.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the president of the United States has to be about substance.
The problem is that Biden didn't make a clear contrast between himself and Trump on the issues that matter. He couldn't get the words out. What a position for Kamala Harris to be in, because she's got to be careful with her assessment of the disaster to make sure she doesn't accidentally rail on him some more by fully acknowledging what really happened. The pundits at MSNBC had to disagree with her while detailing the panic that she avoided.
I, too, was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak. And, you know, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. President Biden had one job tonight, and it was one primary job. And yes, it was to litigate Donald Trump's, you know, criminality and all of those things. But he had to settle his own party. Mm-hmm. He needed to settle Democrats. Democrats, you know, they always talk about Democrats are bedwetters and Democrats are always panicking. Yes, Democrats are always panicking. They're always scared, right? They're always thinking they're going to lose. Like, Democrats are very pessimistic. This is just neurotic. Who they are. They're neurotic. But Joe Biden's job was to reassure them tonight. His job was to calm his party, to make them feel that, yes, I can do this. I have 4 more years in me. I have the ability and the stamina and the strength to do 4 more years. He did not do that.
Can't avoid those truths. But if you listen to what was expected, it shows the campaign started from a place of quelling fears of him falling apart rather than expectations of him simply putting into words the clear opposition to Trump's disdain for America. If the goal was for him to prove he can operate efficiently for the next 4 years, it just shows how rigid the party is with moving on from lifelong politicians that simply need to know when to hang it up.
I was on the phones for some of it after that became clear, and there is a conversation happening inside Biden's circle, and certainly a much more frank conversation happening inside the Democratic coalition. And I think there will be stories of a lot of concern about the performance tonight. And I think when
you say conversations happening, what do you mean?
I think people are talking. I think the conversations range from whether he should be in this race tomorrow morning to what was wrong with him. I mean, he has a cold that came out. Our own Kelly O'Donnell reported that a few minutes in. But exactly what you articulated.
Negative COVID test, but a cold.
Right. So those things were, I mean, the reason reporters were reporting on the cold was because of what you articulated. I mean, the voice was very, very soft. It is not our job to tell people what to see and hear, but I think what I heard from a Biden aide is we can't necessarily spin too much what people did see and hear.
The panic immediately went to conversations about replacing him, which is something some left-leaning voices have been saying for over a year now. But the decision to aggressively push back on those suggestions leaves Democrats in a lose-lose situation. If they openly discuss and prepare to replace him, it's never-ending fodder about how Democrats couldn't come up with a vibrant candidate that's up to the task. It'll also anger Democratic voters that are willing to overlook this performance because the alternative is such a threat to so many Americans' freedom that they think it means that they're surrendering to accepting Trump, which really isn't the case at all. But if they stick with him, this performance will be the narrative from Trump world all the way up to the election. So Democrats might be putting their trust into voters who've been paying attention to the horrific agenda Trump has openly presented and won't suddenly be in favor of an authoritarian that wants to make anyone that isn't MAGA a second-class citizen with fewer rights. Biden was unable to deliver that message, but that doesn't mean the message doesn't exist. They've dug their own hole, and now they have to try to figure out how to crawl back out of it.
You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that has set in. There is panic that has set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Yeah. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful, and I think it's unnecessary. We've got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we've got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that? It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs. That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start having these conversations, go down these rabbit holes, it's unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world.